streaming. Make sure the audio is good. Okay, we're good here. All right, so the people table has only two particular fields. One field is an ID, and you can see ID is auto-incrementing, which means you don't have to set the ID. It is an integer up to 11 digits. It's a primary key. That's it. Cannot be null. The second one is a name, and I'm just using one name instead of breaking it up into first name and last name. It's just name itself. So when I select and display those things from people, I have these particular ones. I have ID 1 is me, ID 2 is Doctor Who, ID 3 is Darth Vader, ID 4 is Luke Skywalker, ID 5 is Han Solo, and ID 6 is Princess Leia. So are there any questions about this particular table? It's a pretty simple table, with an integer as an ID, much like content ID with main content. And then the name is really just what we know, how we call people, right? How we name people. So it's time to describe the other one, which is called likes. So likes is kind of interesting because likes has three particular fields. The first one is, once again, is called ID, and you might find this to be a common thread across all the tables in a particular database. Is the ID of a particular table is just called ID. Okay, I'm not even bothering with content ID or people ID or likes ID. It is just ID because it's the ID of that table. Okay, and once again, it is also incrementing. It's a primary key. It is just an integer. So ID, the ID field of likes is not particularly, interesting. What is interesting is the two additional fields. Okay, you guys okay back there?
Yeah, this person is staying in comfortable closeness to me, and I really think it would be more appropriate if they sat down.
Okay. So is it okay now, or?
No, I think I feel I have the freedom to stand or sit as I please.
Well, in a class, sometimes. Okay, you're not blocking anyone. So do you want to move closer? I mean,
I don't know.
I'm referring to Izzy.
Maybe 5.5, 6 feet away. If that's within the service standard, within her pleasing, then I guess we can continue lecture.
Okay. So are we okay so far?
Quite frankly, I don't feel safe.
Okay. Well, there are plenty of seats up here too. So if you want to move up here, that's good.
Well, so I have sometimes I have it's like an ergonomic. So it's like a back.
Well, okay. If you have a back issue, then it's okay. I understand you might want to stand up a little bit.
That's what it basically it is. Sometimes you see me stretching and stuff.
Okay.
It's hard for me to. It provides me some sort of relief when I stand.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward at this point, to continue with the lecture. But if there are any continuing issue, I just want to point out that we do have a lot of seats up here, so we can kind of move around a little bit. Okay, so getting back to this table, there are two fields. One is called who, basically the person who's doing the liking, and one is called whom, which is referring to the person who's being liked. Okay, but these two they're not strings. So how do we know who is liking who? Well, they're IDs. Okay, so each one is an integer. So who is going to refer to the ID of an entry in the people table, who is doing the liking, and then whom, on the other hand, is referring to the ID of another entry in the people table, which is the person who is getting liked. Is that okay? So one row of the likes table is going to tell us about one particular like instance. Who is liking who? Is that okay? Yep, go ahead.
I think we got lost with the interruption to your flow. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so I want to be able to show, let me get his question first so I can see whether we can answer both questions. Yep.
You name it instead of who is liked, and the other one who likes, and then whom is liked.
okay, the who is the
Who likes, that's the person who likes somebody.
who is the one doing the action? Who is the one receiving the
Who
action?
is like, and then who is like, who likes, like John likes. So-and-so. And then who
Is it because it's confusing?
It's just, it's more specific, so nobody can get but if it's, I mean, whatever works.
Okay, I'm just going to stay with this one. You know, so who is the person who is identifying the person who is doing the liking, and then whom is identifying the person who is being liked. Okay. So getting back to, so is that okay? I mean, are we reconnecting to the concepts?
Yes, and
Okay.
they're liking the blog of the user.
Mm-hmm.
The poster, I should say.
Yep, so the table, you currently have these entries. So forget about ID. Don't take a look at ID, it's not really useful. But this is telling me that the person who has an ID of 5 inside the people table is liking the person who has ID of 6 in the same table, in the people table. So who's number 5 and who's number 6? Do you guys remember?
No.
Okay. I think that's classic, right? Okay, so 5 and 6 is Han Solo and Princess Leia, indeed. So we definitely have Han Solo liking Princess Leia, which
Not like Dr. Who.
and Tack likes Doctor Who, Doctor Who, not whom, who. Okay, so yes, so but how do we look at this whole thing so that it actually shows like that, right? Are we looking at this? Are we doing okay so far with understanding what this table is looking at? What is the purpose of this table? No. Okay, so let's say you're maintaining a dating website. Okay, lucrative. It's trendy, right? Right now they're saying these dating websites they're being very effective. Okay, not romantic, but they're very effective of matching up people. So you're maintaining a database. So you have one row in some table for each user who has registered. So that's our people table. So our people table is very simple. Okay, I'm just maintaining the name, so I'm not even bothering with the address, phone number, and all the other stuff. I'm just maintaining the name of people who are currently registered with this website. Okay, but you have to kind of maintain the social network thing and know that who is liking whom. Is that making any sense? So how would you keep track of that? Now, one way to keep track of that is to say, okay, we have another table where it has 2 names. One name is the person who is doing the liking, and the other name being the person who is being liked. That's possible, but if you have a typo, then tech oil may be misspelled in the other one. So we don't want to deal with misspelling, and on top of that, we also want to have one single table to store everything that has to do with individual users. So if I want to maintain like my primary phone number, I want to add it to this table, but not the other table. Okay? So the other table that is just tracking who is liking whom should only refer to the ID of this table so that I can retrieve all the personal information about each user from the people table. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay? So that's the reason why when you look at the likes table, it is only using a single number, a single integer to identify which person is liking who else. Is that part okay?
Yes.
So the rationale of doing it this way is so that we can have one single table to store information about people, and then all of the other tables just only need to use one single integer to refer to a particular person. Is that okay? All right. So the question now is, how do I print it out in a way that I can see who is liking whom? That is the question. So the question can now be answered like this. Oh, this is the other thing that I need to talk about, is you can select star from a join operation. Okay, so a join operation, as the name implies, is really just people join likes. Okay, I'm just going to do it like this for now. So this is called an outer join operation. It's not spelled out as outer join. It is just spelled out as join. But I did not specify a where clause. If you do not specify a where clause, it's going to look like this. So what is happening here is it is taking each. Okay, so if you look at the first 6 entries, what do you notice about the first 6 entries of this select? Something is the same, right? The ID, the who, and the whom are all the same, because we are only picking one single row out of likes, the table likes. And it is crossing that, it's connecting one single row of likes, and it is connecting it to every single row from people.
This is cross-check. Cross-check.
It is what?
Cross-check, where it fixes every possibility.
It's a cross product. Okay, it's also called a Cartesian product in set theory. When you look at the second set of 6 entries, it is using the second row of likes, and then it is crossing that with every single row from people. Is that okay? Yep.
Yeah, I see it as it's going to be like a triple join where you have the user creates the post ID, so you have the user ID, the post ID, and then the person who likes it likes the post ID, so then that's how you get it all to work together.
Well, we'll take a look at a triple join later, because a triple join is really a single join on another single join.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you look at the third set, not surprisingly, it is just looking at the third row of likes, and it is crossing it with every single row from people. So are we doing okay so far with this? The join operation, this is called an outer join. Okay, so the outer join doesn't seem to be very useful in this case. So what we want to do is to say, okay, we can specify where, okay, to kind of put some restrictions. So this time we want to say, we want the ID of people, okay? This makes it very clear. ID is going to, because people has ID and then likes has ID too. So when you say people.id, it is referring to the ID field of the people table. But I can now specify a constraint and say this ID has to match the who of likes. Okay? So what happens this time is it will only locate certain rows. It will only print certain rows. I can go back and show you which one is going to print. This ID has to match this who. So this row will show up. What is the next one that has a match? Oh, this one won't show up because ID of 1 does not match a 5. So
It looks like the 7th row.
this one will do, right? Because the ID of people, which is 5, is matching who. So this row will show up in the second query. When you look at this one, let's see.
How about 2 more rows down?
How can you?
2 more rows down.
From
This row will show up too. Oh, this row won't show up because this is matching the 6, which is the whom.
Okay.
Let's see.
Next row.
How can you?
The next row, oh, this one, yep, this one will show up because the ID of 1 of people is matching the who of likes. Okay, so when we press enter key, and indeed it show up, this one, because the ID of 5 is matching the who, the ID of 1 is matching the ID of who, the ID of 5 is once again matching the ID of who, and so on. Are we doing okay so far with this? Yes? Okay, good. So now what you
This is
can,
an inner join, is that correct?
this is called an inner join, exactly. It is called an inner join because we are looking for equality between the ID or the primary key of one table with what we call a foreign key or just another field of the field of another table. So, is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So this is called an inner join, except the term inner join is never referred to when we have the join operation. Is that okay? The result of this particular inner join is giving us this result that has 5 individual fields. This is not a table. This is the result of a join operation, but it looks like a table, doesn't it? Because it looks like a table that has 5 fields. It has got an ID, it's got name, it's got another ID, who and who. So we can join this again. Okay, seems to make sense. So when we join this again, we can join it one more time with people. But there's a problem with this approach. Because when we join it one more time with people, so people join likes join people, this time we have a problem. Because if I need to refer to the constraints, okay, because what I like to do is to say, oh, the second constraint we want to put here is and likes dot whom equals to the second people dot ID. Because we want to figure out exactly who likes who. Okay, and we want to get the names. Is that okay? But this is not going to work. When I press the enter key, MySQL is going to complain and go like, we got a problem because we have 2 references to people. The first reference to people is right here. The second reference to people is over here. And there's no way MySQL can actually tell, are you referring to this people or this people in the join specification? So the way to fix this problem is you have to use an alias. You can specify in this one, okay, as, okay, you can call this one people liked, okay. So by using as, this is basically, this part here is specifying, we use the alias of people liked to the second table people. So now I can now refer to people liked down here. Okay, move my cursor all the way down here. So I can now specify people liked to be here. This query is going to be okay. But do we understand what this query is really specifying? Okay, so we will press the enter key, and it looks kind of cool, right? Because this 5 is matching who is doing the liking. This 6 is matching who is being liked. This 1 is specifying who's doing the liking. This 2 is specifying who is being liked. So now we can see the Han Solo likes Princess Leia. We can also see the Han Solo likes Luke Skywalker. A different kind of like, but nonetheless alike. Okay. I like Doctor Who, and I also like Darth Vader. So in a crossover universe, I always wonder what's going to happen when those 2 meet. Doctor Who versus Darth Vader. The screwdriver versus the lightsaber.
Screwdriver, man.
Screwdriver? Well, I think the TARDIS is going to win. The TARDIS is far more powerful than the Death Star. There's no comparison. Okay, even in the new Star Wars, the Death Star draws fuel from the sun, right? And they think it's really a big deal. But guess what? The TARDIS contains a star. There's a star inside the TARDIS. So I think the TARDIS wins.
I was just thinking that, sure, he couldn't beat Darth Vader in like a one-on-one fight, but I'm sure he would find some kind of way to screw up his lightsaber if he ever tricked him into letting it go or something.
Okay, I think Doctor Who has a very unfair advantage being a Time Lord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're broken.
Yep. So here we have Princess Leia also liking Luke Skywalker, and Skywalker liking Princess Leia. So this is how a associative table works. Okay, it is using the ID to identify an entry of another table. Okay, likes, the table likes is what we call an associative table. And its only job, okay, is to say this entry from this table is related to that entry in that table. That's its job. Are we doing okay so far with the join operation? Do you guys want a little bit of time to kind of talk about yourselves, or is that not needed? You get to vote. Okay. Would it be helpful?
Just for a minute,
Just for a minute? Okay, so we'll go ahead and,
or a little bit.
I think the best thing, I took a series on YouTube, it's offered by Steve Bishop. He has like over 100 videos on Access, so if you get through video 67, it would all make sense.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have, let's say we come back at about 47. Would that be okay? 3 minutes? Everybody, is that okay? 3 minutes? Okay, 47 then. That gives me enough time to get some more change.
Best YouTube series I ever took on Access. That's too broad. It's just, Bishop is just around 130 videos on Access.
Are we gonna have time to go over the assignment,
The
the
join.
joint assignment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to first introduce the concept and then we'll move on and talk about it.
The like stuff is like school number two. The like school. The like school.
So likes is, this part is likes. And then this part is people, and this part is people liked. But it is aliased as people liked, because I cannot have two people and be able to differentiate how to compare those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's like.
Who? That would be?
No. The guy who
Iraj?
teaches, Sarat,
Yeah, subset verb. Yeah.
So,
About time to get paperwork.
Hey, Professor, I went to a building convention at Cal Expo, and I was offering a project management program to these companies, building companies for construction to get geo work. So I have this engineering program, and I added like 40 geo companies, so I was trying to tell them they could submit service requests, and that way it would send it to all the geo companies for bid for their designs. It was a good convention. They gave us lunch and stuff.
Cool. Sounds like a good application of this class.
It really is. It's my life.
All right, it's 48, so I'm gonna resume. Are we okay? All right. Okay. So I'm gonna resume, just because I want to go over all the topics for this assignment, which currently has a due date of Sunday. So the database modification only needs to be done once. Okay. this particular line is going to create a new table called subject. So I've just copy and pasted into my query here. Into my MySQL client here. Press the enter key. So now we have a new table called subjects. So I can double check and make sure that subjects is created correctly. So it has got the subject ID and also has got the subject. Which one is a string, the other one is just an integer. The next thing we need to do is to sort of copy and paste these 3 lines here to create 3 rows for the new table that we have just created. So this is where I just want to kind of mention that it's going to give you a warning. Okay, if you copy and paste this, it's going to give you a warning. Let me do it once so that we can see the warning, and I will show you guys how to fix the problem. Like how to make it not give you a warning. See how there's a warning here? One warning. That particular warning has to do with we attempted to specify an empty string to be the subject ID. That is where the warning is coming from. Subject ID has auto increment specified already, which basically means we do not specify the subject ID when we add a row. Okay, it cannot be changed, and we cannot specify when we insert something into this table. So if you do not want the warning, which I think is probably a good idea, because you don't want any warnings when you're compiling a program in other classes, or when you're dealing with a MySQL database, when you execute a query, you don't want those warnings either. So you can always use the same thing here, but in addition, what you do is you specify what fields you're going to specify. So in this case, I only want to specify the content of subject when I add a row, but not subject ID. So subject is the only one, and then when we specify values, we only specify the next one, which is news. Okay, so news is here, and then this one will execute without a warning. It is still successful, but it doesn't give you a warning. So does everybody understand what happened here? How I got rid of the warning? Okay. So same thing for the third one, which is a topic. So I can just copy this one, and this time I changed subject to just topics. But once again, I am not specifying subject ID because it is self-generated by the database. So now we have the 3 entries, and then we say select star from subjects, and we get the 3 entries. Okay. Oh, topic, not topics. Okay. You can always change it. How do we change the third item? Because I mistyped topic as topics. So how do I change it? Update. Okay, very good. So we have to update the table name, which is subjects. We set subject equals to topic, where subject ID equals to 3. In other words, the where clause is really helpful. Anytime you want to filter and say this applies only to the rows that satisfy this requirement, that's when the where clause is useful. The set part, everything from set all the way up to where, allows you to specify any number of fields that you want to modify. If you have multiple fields that you want to modify, you use a comma to separate those particular fields. Okay. In this case, we are only changing the field of subject to topic. Yep. Go ahead.
The table name is subject or what?
Huh?
What's the table name?
The table name is subjects.
Subject. You change the subject to topic?
I change the field subject of a row of the table subjects to topic.
I thought you changed the name of the table.
There's a lot of plural versus singular in this one single sentence.
Yes.
Okay. So is this part okay? Just setting up the new table, okay, creating a new table and inserting 3 entries into the new table.
Can we change the name of the table? Whether we change?
I do not know whether you can change the name of a table or not. You can always drop it and then recreate it.
But sometimes we have a lot of data in a table.
Huh?
Sometimes we have a lot of data we enter it or we insert it in a table.
You can always dump the entire database, go through the dump, replace the names, and then drop everything, and then run that dump through the client again. I don't know whether you can actually just change the name of a table. That sounds really dangerous to me.
I will ask subs about this.
Okay, well, it depends on the database. I don't think it's a well-supported function in that case. Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say, when I created the subjects table, I copied that entire block and pasted it in, and it created it. I didn't have to add each line individually.
Yes, but that would generate the warnings too.
It didn't.
It did
There was
not?
0 warnings, but I think it's because it was the first time it was all together. It didn't do any warnings.
I don't think it depends on whether it's the first time or not. Are you doing it on our server or on a different server?
On our server.
On our server?
On Maria.
Maybe you just didn't see it.
No, I mean, that's very possible. I did this, several days ago, so I think I didn't realize.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it is the same thing. If you do it like multiple rows at the same time, it would have given you warnings with each one. But now I have 3 duplicate rows, which is okay. Okay, so when we have duplicate rows, what do? I want to get rid of the duplicates. I want to get rid of, let's get rid of 1, 2, and 3, and keep 4, 5, and 6. How do we do that? Well, I mean, your current delete, right? Okay, delete from, okay. So we say delete from subjects, in this case. But if I need to specify which rows I want to delete.
I would say we're subject ID. 1, 2, 3.
In 1, 2, 3.
There's no S on subjects ID.
Oh, yep, subject ID, fine. Okay, that will work, but there's another way to do it too. You can always specify subject ID to be less than or equal to 3, and subject ID to be greater than or equal to 1. That will do the same thing. Okay, so the in is really helpful because in this case, obviously that's actually a shorter query. But sometimes, if you have like thousands of entries within the range, this is better. You can just specify everything from 1,000 to 6,000, remove those. Okay. So press the enter key, 3 rows affected, print it again, and we only get 4, 5, and 6 left. So are we okay so far with how to set up the subjects table? Okay, all right. And this is also just a review of the other queries that we have already talked about, the update and also the delete. Okay, so this is a review of some of the stuff that we have already talked about. So now we also want to execute this particular query. This one does not create a new table. Instead, what it does is it changes our main content table so that we are adding a new field to it. Okay. So when we copy and paste this into the client, and then we say describe main content. Now main content has an extra field called subject ID. So the first question is, what is it going to look like, from the existing entries? So we can always just kind of focus on subject ID from main content, and they're all null. Okay. In other words, every single entry that we have at this point in the database does not really specify what subject it belongs to. So this is where the next portion is useful. So we want to go back to main content and add the appropriate ID for the subjects. Yep.
I have a question really quick. I
Yeah.
have to show you I took the subjects table out and I put it back in because it got messed up. And I got a warning that says there is an error because there's a duplicate column name. So is that going to be a problem or am I okay right here? Because
Okay.
I went through, I took the table back out, but I had already connected it to
Okay,
main
so
content.
just hold that like that. Okay, so when you describe it again, it only has one subject ID because it didn't let your second query to go.
Okay.
You cannot have duplicate column names or field names.
I just
So
wanna
the
make
second
sure.
time you try to add subject ID as a field, it failed because it's already there. Okay. So now we want to focus on this part here, which is not a part of your script. It is just something that you have to do as a one-shot thing. Once you have added the subjects and altered your table, you must go into the main content table using the MySQL client and add in the appropriate IDs for the subjects. In other words, everything that we have created up to this point are blocks, right? So we need to look up the ID of blocks. Okay, so we want to look, just manually go through subjects, and we can see block has an ID of 4. So now we need to use that particular ID of 4 and fill in the subject ID for all the existing entries in main content. Is that making any sense? Does everybody understand what we are about to do? Yes? Okay. So that means we have to use update again. Every time you're not adding or deleting a row, instead you're making changes to existing rows, you use the update query. So we say update main content, and then we say set. Okay, so we set subject ID, I think. Okay, let me double check. Yep, subject ID equals to 4. And that applies to every single entry. So if you don't specify where, it applies automatically to everything. So that's why you have to be extra careful when you're altering or when you're updating a table. You have to make sure that you always specify where whenever it is applicable. If you do not specify where, it applies to everything. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was confused because you were saying main content, and that I thought it was a subjects table.
Because main content has a new field or new column called subject ID.
Okay.
But when you add a new column to an existing table, the value of every single row for that particular column will be empty or null.
Okay.
And as a result, we have to backfill on those and say that, okay, all the existing entries, they're all blocks. Because at this point of the homework assignment, we have only been editing blocks. So that's why it makes sense to use block, the ID of block, to initialize all of the subject IDs that we have currently in main content.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and check out what it looks like right now. So we select everything from main content and from main content, and they all have I know it wraps around, looks really bad, but basically they all have a subject ID of 4. Okay. When you print this out as the output in HTML, and you say, oh, by the way, the subject ID of this thing is 4, do you think the end user knows what that means? Absolutely not, because 4 is just an integer. What is that, right? So what you want to do is to use a join operation so that when you get the query, when you get the output of the query, the 4 is automatically, quote unquote, automatically translated back to block. Okay? So this is where the join operation comes in handy, because what you do is you say select. Now I'm not gonna select everything because the content is what is really huge and you kind of mess up the display. So I'll just select a few things. I will select title. I will select author. I will select subject ID or subject. Okay. Now this time it's kind of interesting because subject. There's no such thing of subject in main content, but subject is in subjects, okay, the table subjects. So I can now say select all of these fields from main content, okay, join subjects. Okay, so far I'm not done with this query yet, okay, but I'm explaining it as we construct the query. So the first part is basically just saying, okay, I'm hand-picking what I want to display. I only want to display the title, I only want to display the author, and also just the subject. You can change the order too. There's no reason why you have to put subject as last. In other words, if you want to, you can put subject first. Absolutely no problem with that. Okay, so you can always say subject first. There you go. The second part, which is this part here, is specifying, okay, where are those columns coming from? Where are those fields coming from, right? Those fields are coming from main content joined with subjects. Now, if you don't specify anything like that and just specify the semicolon and press the enter key, you get a lot of entries because it becomes an outer join where every row of one table is paired up with every row of the other table which doesn't make sense in this case. Okay, we don't want to do that. So what we do want to do, okay, is to specify that the main content. Okay, why am I not typing? Okay. Okay. Join with subject where. Okay. So now we need to specify the inner join condition. So we want to specify that subjects dot subject ID has to match main content subject ID. Okay. In other words, we are looking at the two tables and say that, okay, we only want to pair up this row with the other row if and only if this condition is true. Yep.
Does it matter if you ordered it?
Does not matter which way you ordered. The order is independent. Are there any questions at this point about this query? It is important that you designate which table. You cannot just say, subject ID equals to subject ID, because one subject ID belongs to the table called subjects. The other one belongs to the table that is called main content. Now, in terms of technical terms, subject ID is the primary key of subjects, which means subject ID as a field uniquely identify items inside a table called subjects. And that's why it's called a primary key. On the other hand, subject ID is called a foreign key in the table that we call main content, because it is an ID, so that each row of main content can refer to a row of somebody else, and that's why it's called a foreign key. I look at the camera and go like, okay, cloaking device, turn on cloaking device.
You need the cloak of invisibility.
I can summon the TARDIS, and drop that in front of me.
Please don't.
Make that swishing sound. Okay, so are we good with this query so far? Is that okay? So when we press the enter key or semicolon and we press the enter key, okay, subjects. Okay, I misnamed the table. Now it works. So now we can see that the subject is blocked for every single one. Is that okay? Yes? No? Okay, I see some frowning, I see some nodding. Are there any questions? Okay, go ahead.
I kind of missed something. How is it that all the subjects are already set to block? I missed that part. I'm
Because
sorry.
we did this earlier. They are all blocks because we did that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yep.
We've been working on this while I was trying to figure out the lead, and I just decided to move forward. I ended up editing all my blog subjects using my table, the entry where you can select and select a blog. Does that make a difference? I didn't do the string that she put in there. I actually edited all the subjects by using the drop-down code that I'd written.
Oh, okay, so you did all the editing through the web interface.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Does it
that's
make a
fine.
difference, right? It's calling the same thing, basically.
Yes. So I'm doing everything in the back end, just using MySQL as a client, instead of going through the PHP code.
So,
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I was gonna say, if we were trying to create a column or a subject, when you tried to do that earlier, when she did that earlier with the duplicate, it basically didn't let her because it was a duplicate. If you try to do that through the interface, it would probably also say you can't,
Exactly.
It wouldn't work.
If you cannot do it through the interactive client, you cannot do it through the web interface.
So maybe a way to figure out if we're doing something totally wrong with our code would be to go back to the interface and see if we can do it in the interface, and then.
Exactly. Yep. Yep, and this is highly recommended too. Before you try to put in a query in your web interface, in your PHP code, test it by hand first using the MySQL interactive client program. Because if you cannot do it here, there's no way you can do it inside the script. So it's a good way to check the syntax, just to make sure it works. And if you think that you might be doing something that's destructive, in the previous class we talked about how to back up an entire database. So if you did screw up the database, it's okay, just restore it. So if you suspect that your experiment may end up changing something that's really bad, just back it up first. We can always restore it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So given this, and let's continue to read the homework assignment. So in add modification, on the admin page, give me the ability to add new subjects. So basically you have to create a new form, okay, to basically say, okay, I would like to add a new subject to all the subjects available. Okay. So how would you do that?
It's pretty much the same as adding any other thing, correct? We just have to
Yep.
make sure we're not going to exactly duplicate the subject because it won't let us.
So what you need to do is to create a PHP script. You need to have a form, okay, so that you can collect the text of the subject. Whatever text you collect with the subject, you just have to put it here and then run this query. That's it. Now you might want to check for duplicates, okay, just to be nice, okay, you want to check for duplicates so you don't end up with like 16 blog subjects, okay, so that might be nice to have. But other than that, it is, yeah, go ahead.
Previously when we had a view and it was telling, we had this in a prior assignment where it showed us how to do the checking for duplicates.
To check for duplicates, right. Right.
Pretty much use that same code, correct?
Yes, very similar code, except in this case, your checking for duplicate would use this query. So in order to check for duplicates, you basically say select, and then you say count subject from subjects where subject equals 2. So if you suspect that you have duplicate, you have a block entry already, or whatever is the text field from your form, you put it inside the single quotes here, and then you press the enter key. If the answer is not 0, that means you got an entry of that name already. Do not add the new one into the table. On the other hand, bloggy is not here, so that the answer is 0. So you can use the same approach.
And we'd just be using a variable to check in our code.
Yep. So in this case, it is still a select query, so you have to use MySQL fetch row just once to get the result of that row. That row is going to have one single item, so you have to refer to bracket 0 of that row to get the number, whether it's 0 or non-zero. If it's non-zero, then it's duplicate. If it is 0, that means it doesn't exist yet, so it's okay to insert it. So basically, in the end, it is still basically the same kind of query that we have talked about already. This is the one that you use to check for duplicates, and then this is the one that you use to insert into it. But the other one, the one that doesn't give me a warning. This one. So this one is the one that will not give you a warning, and this is how you add a row to the subjects table. So we kind of do okay or not? Yes? You doing okay? Okay. Well, since it seems like that we are inserting a lot into various tables and checking for duplicates in various tables, the question now is, can we come up with a subroutine to make our code easier to read so that we can reuse code, we don't have to copy, paste, and modify everywhere? Does that seem like a reasonable thing to do? Okay, so So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit, how to turn things into subroutines. I'm going to keep this one here. I will use another terminal to kind of sign in to work on the code. So let's see internet. Okay, so I'm going back to my admin.php, and I'm going to add a function. Okay, this function is just check duplicate. Okay, and it's going to take a few parameters. The first parameter is link. Okay, it kind of makes sense because for anything that you do with MySQL functions, you need to supply the link because we are not using the object-oriented code, so you have to pass link as the first parameter to almost all of the MySQL queries. When you check for duplicates, you have to specify at least 2 things or 3 things. Okay, you have to specify what fields you will be using and what are the values for those particular fields that you would consider as duplicates. Is that making any sense? Okay.
And the table name that you're checking
Say it again?
The name of the table that you're checking the duplicates in?
And the name of the table, okay, makes sense too. So it will need link, it will need table name, and then I would use an associative table or associative array to specify what field should have what value. Okay, so this is associating field to values. Okay. All right. So now we need to formulate the query itself. The idea of an associative field value. Let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, because this is kind of useful. So I will put a bookmark here first, and then we look for the code that we already have that checks for duplicates. And that would be, okay, I can look for count because that's, there we go. So this is how we check for duplicates. So in this case, the content ID is the field where the duplicate may occur. Oh, actually, I take it back. This is just one of the things we can count, but what we are really checking for would be the fields where the values are. Okay, that would be author, title, and also there's one more. Are we checking created? Subject. Okay, there we go. Subject. No. Subject is not even here yet, so that's why we are not checking that yet. Okay. I'm just going back. We are checking title, author, and content. So we do check for all those 3 fields for duplicates. Okay. And here we have a. This is the associative array that that is already done. Okay. The form value is an associative array. When you look at field, each field is from form fields, and form fields is an array which is title, author, and content. But I'm actually storing the value of the form, of the get variable into each one. So this is the associative array that we are talking about. So I want to be able to pass this form value array into that particular subroutine so that we can do something like that. Which also means most of this code can be copied. This is what we actually want to use. So the code from, I would say, line 211 to about here, that's basically what we want to copy. So down to 235 is what we want to copy. But a straight copy is not going to work very effective in this case. So what I'll do is I'm going to split the screen. Split the screen so that one part stays here, and then the other parts would go back to the beginning here. Are we comfortable with splitting the screen so that one part is looking at the code that I'm copying by hand, and the other part is looking at the function that I'm defining? Yep.
How did you split the screen?
This is using VI.
Oh.
So in VI, you just do a colon and then split, and it will split the screen. I think Notepad++ may be able to display multiple portions of the same file, which comes in very handy in situations like this. All right, so I'm going back to the first split because I need to kind of copy this portion too. So we basically have two strings that we have to construct. One is the where criteria. It is starting off as an empty string. And then the other one would be, where is one, and then the other one would be what we are counting. Nope, that should be it. Where is fine, and we also want to specify, I'm just looking for what to count. Okay. Okay. Count field. Because we have to specify which field for counting, so that's why we have a count field here. All right, so the where is going to be the same thing as what we have here. We basically just go through each item for each. The array is associate field value, and then when we pull each item out, we have to get both the key and the value. Okay, so we have to specify the key as well as the value, like that. So K is the key and V is the value. When we construct a where string, for each iteration, where is I'm using the .equal symbol, which is basically concatenation. In other words, whatever I specify to the right-hand side of .equal is appended to whatever where already has. Okay. And we'll do it the kind of easy way first, and then we'll go back and fix a few problems. So what we're doing here is we want to specify the key, which is the name of the field, has to equal to a single quote because the value has to be quoted, $V, just like that. And then we use another double quote to end the string itself. So are we doing okay so far with this? Because I am formulating a part of the query, the SQL query itself, where K specifies the name of the field and $V specifies the value that I am looking for that particular field. But the problem with this code at this point is it doesn't do the AND, okay? Because we want to be able to specify this equals this, and this equals this, and this equals this. So I'm going to borrow this trick here from the original code, where I specify first is true to begin with, and then after this one, first becomes false. Okay, and then before this, we specify and say if not. Okay, oh, not is not defined. So if not first, then we have to specify the conjunction, which is the end, the word end. But we also have to remember to put spaces around the end, because otherwise, things will just get kind of clunked together, and it's not going to work. Are we doing okay so far with this? It's the same code that I have. I'm just extracting certain portions of my original code. So when I have this where string done, then we can go ahead and make use of it. So now we specify the query, what the query should look like. So the query is going to look like this. It's going to say select, count, and then we have a particular parameter to specify which field name we should be using for counting purposes. It is called count field. So count field goes here, and then the where is easy because we got the where string already constructed at this point, and then we just specify a semicolon, and of course I forgot to specify from, and this is a table name, which is also a parameter. So are there any questions about how the select query itself is constructed? Sorry? Is this okay? Is that cool?
You mean this is the select query?
Yep. This is the select query where the result will tell me whether there's a duplicate item or not.
Do we need a semicolon right after the period?
Not when you're doing it inside here. If you put a semicolon, it's okay. It's not going to screw things up, but you do not need one. But you can always put one, you know, if you want to have it. It doesn't really matter.
It makes me nervous.
the lack of, right? The lack of makes you nervous. Okay, we can always put one in. It's not a big deal. Okay, so once we have the query here, we can go ahead and use, okay, I'm going to continue with this code here. Okay. So we can now use a run query. Okay, so we say if run query link, which is a parameter given to me, query, which is something that we just constructed a little bit earlier, query result, which is going to be used to store the result of the query so that we can check whether it's a 0 or non-zero, and then underscore line underscore, which tells us, you know, which line, you know, this run query is coming from in case of error. So if this is successful, then we can now say row is MySQL fetch row query result. And as I said a little bit earlier, this row there's only one row as a result, and this row only has one field, which is a number. If it is 0, it means, you know, we do not have a duplicate. If it is non-zero, that means, you know, we already have entries that meet those requirements already. So now we have to make up our mind and say, okay, if I name the subroutine check duplicates, what is supposed to return true and what is supposed to return false? That doesn't really tell us anything, right? Because check duplicates is an action, but it's not really a question where the answer is either true or false. Is that making any sense? Okay, so it may be better to change the name of the subroutine to is. Okay, I'm just trying to formulate the name of the. The name is, are there duplicates? So that the answer is either true or false. I'm just trying to find a more concise way to say that. What do you guys think?
Any duplicates?
Any duplicates? Well, but that doesn't, it still doesn't say true or false as the answer, right?
True, false, duplicate, or TF duplicates, I don't know.
What is duplicate?
Are there duplicates is what I want. Okay. How about that? Okay, so the bottom line is I want to name the subroutine so that I can interpret the answers immediately. I don't have to look at the code to figure out, okay, it returns true if there are duplicates or if there are no duplicates, right? So if the question is, are there duplicates? That means, you know, if there are in fact duplicates, it returns true. If there are no duplicates, it returns false, right? Okay. But there's a better way to name this one. Is there one? Okay, because that's what we're looking for. Okay, is there one entry of a database that meets these requirements? So I think is there one, you know, is a better name. It's either true, there's at least one, or no, there's not a one. There's not one that meets this requirement. Is that okay? I know I'm nitpicking the name of a subroutine, but when you have a lot of subroutines, the name of subroutines really matters. Because otherwise, you look at the name of subroutine, you don't know what it's actually doing. Okay, so so now we can just, you know, use the result of row as our answer. Okay, so we can now say result is row 0 not equaling to 0. If it's non-zero, we return true. If it is in fact 0, we return false. Is that okay? So we go back here, and then we just say return result. And it might be good to pre-initialize result to something first. So we say result equals to false to begin with, until we find evidence contrary then we say it is true. We do okay? More or less? Okay, shall we test this? And we have something that they can make use of this already, right? So we can go ahead and just, test it over here. This is the one thing that we can use to test it. Now, when you're testing something like this, okay, so we can comment out certain lines of code. So I'm going to comment out the code that is no longer useful. So we're going to say comment out this, because that's going to be done by this particular query. So we'll comment out all of this stuff, and we'll comment out this, comment out this, and this one we also comment out, but that's the last one that we comment out. Instead of using all that previous code, what are we going to do? We'll call our brand spanking new function, right? So we say if is, what is the name of the subroutine? Is there one? Okay. Is there one? Okay. So then we pass link. We pass the name of the table. In this case, it's just main content. And then we pass the associative array that has all the field names. And that is already constructed. I just need to remember the name of that thing. It is form value. Okay, there we go. I'm just double checking. Yep, form value is the one. And there's one more parameter, which is the name of the count field, and that in this case is content ID. All right, we'll check the rest. If there's one matching those things already, then we complain and say, entry cannot be added, duplicate found. If not, we actually go ahead and insert it into the table. Okay, so we have just made that one little modification, and we'll test it. So we'll go ahead and test. Okay, that's not mine. rccis.net. Okay, there we go. So we go to this bottom here, and we want to duplicate something. Okay, so the A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G, H, I. This is the first one. It should be added successfully because there are no entries like this already. So this one should go through, and we should have a new entry. And then I'll do it one more time, and this one should not go through because it is a duplicate. So if this one does not go through, it means our new function is working correctly. Otherwise, we have to go back and fix it. Okay, and it is not added. So that function worked. Okay, but that function can now be reused. Okay, when we try to add the form to add a new subject, we can reuse that function now. Is that making any sense? So anytime you get into a project where it's getting more and more complicated, and you find out that, hey, this code looks just like that code, except we make some minor changes here, it's time to think about how can I turn this into a subroutine so that I don't have to copy, paste, and modify code all over the place. Okay? It happens all the time. Okay, as your project grows, bigger and bigger, you will start to realize and go like, oh, I'm redoing something that I have done already, except it's slightly different. Turn it into a subroutine. Is that okay? All right. Okay, so now we can go ahead and make a form to basically add new subjects. So there are two aspects, when you want to do something like that, there are two aspects to making a form. One part is creating the form itself, and the other part is to handle the request from that form. Okay, we are adding a new subject. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to add this form here. Okay, this is a new form that I will put here. In order to generate this form, I will need to get the individual fields, the individual items in the subjects table. Okay. So that's probably something I want to turn into a subroutine later on, but right now I'm not going to do it. So we'll go ahead and specify, this is a query, and the query is select subject ID subject from subjects, and we want to select all of them. Okay, not just one, but we want to select all of them. And you might say, but Tech, we could have just specified asterisk here. The answer is yes, I could have specified just asterisk, but if you specify asterisk, do you remember the actual ordering of the fields? Sometimes, sometimes not. With this one it's easy because we only have 2 fields. But in general, when you have a lot of fields, you may not remember which one is which one. So I personally like to spell out the fields that I'm looking for and just put it here in the order that I want to specify. So the next one is if run query. So this is, you can see how the run query function is really useful because I use it all the time. Whenever something does not happen correctly, it complains. It dies and it complains about which line is causing the problem, which is what I want it to do. So we have link. We have to pass it the query itself. We have to specify query result because I need to kind of look through all the rows. And at the same time, we also want to specify the current line. In case it doesn't work, I want to know which line this query is coming from, or which line triggers the execution of this query. Okay. I'm just gonna stop here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna specifically put in an error here. So I'll put in an error such as intentionally having a typo mistake with subject. In other words, I'm testing my code and say, are you complaining when you're supposed to complain?
How about the if statement? Is that an intentional error?
Which one?
The if statement, run query, misspelled.
Oh, well, let's find out what's going to happen then. Okay, but thank you for pointing it out. It is not intentional, but that's the best part of it. It complains about it, and syntax error, unexpected end curly brace on line 279. Oh, okay. So we go to 279, and it's saying that this particular end curly brace is not supposed to be there. It has no matching begin. No, that's the matching begin. What is it complaining about? Unexpected end curly brace, expecting end of file on line 279. Okay, so I did something. Probably has to do with the commenting out. Oh, okay, I know why. The query may not be working as I expected because I forgot to save the file before I tested it. Okay, let me say that one more time. It appeared to work correctly, when I demonstrated it because I forgot to save it first. Okay, otherwise this error would have happened. The problem is I commented out one open curly brace, but I did not comment out the matching and curly brace. Okay, that's the problem. There are 2 solutions to this problem. One is really kind of not recommended, and the other one is better. I can just do this. There's no harm done by uncommenting just the open curly brace, because this open curly brace was corresponding to this if, but the if is gone. Okay, you can always open a block with no particular reason. Okay, it's always okay. So this would fix that problem. Then I would get a different error. I'm getting a different error, and this time syntax error, unexpected if on line 374. So we go to line 374, and it has to do with the previous line not having a semicolon to end the statement itself. Okay, typical mistake. Fix that one. I'm going to get yet another error message, and this time it has to do with call to undefined function, because you already pointed out that I had a typo. Okay, fix that one. So query like that. And we'll run it one more time, and it's going to complain again. As expected, it says, select subject ID, subject from line 374, failed because subject does not exist in this database. Woohoo! It caught it. I'm actually happy that it complained, because that's the whole purpose of what I have been building in this particular program. Okay? But this whole string of all the errors and whatnot is showing you, programming or development, code development is not about writing code quickly. It is about fixing bugs quickly.
And this is much better than not getting an error and your program not working.
Oh, failing silently? Oh, those are the worst. Those are the absolute worst problems that you can get, is it just fails, okay? All right, so now we want to go back and check this. Remember, we never really checked this one. Okay, so we want to double check and see if, oh, that enter should not be there. And we want to check that. It does not insert, so it worked, okay? This time I know for sure. Okay, so now we can make that new form, right? But before we make that new form, I just want to double check and say that I can print out, all the subject and the subject ID, okay? Because if I don't know that I can get those things from the query, forget about the form. It's not going to work. Okay, so we'll go to here, and then we'll say, as long as row equals to MySQL fetch row query result, do the following. So each row has two items. The first one is subject ID, the second one is the subject itself. So I'm not going to make anything fancy here. I'm just going to print row 0 points to row 1, and then we'll put a break here. That's all I'm going to do. Refresh the page, and we got 4 going to blog, 5 going to news, 6 going to topic. We good so far? So is that okay so far, with this program? You can see how I'm not, writing, 100 lines of code and then just, testing it, after writing 100 lines of code. I'm testing it every, 5 or 6 lines of code. Because why do you think I'm doing that? There are 2 reasons.
You can find the error if it comes up.
Yep. Well, the first one is because I can. Okay, and you guys might think, okay, that seems a pretty rebellious statement to say in the class, just because I can. Well, it is real, okay? 30, 40, and 50 years ago, you cannot do this, okay? Because when you write a program, it is in punch card, right? So when you have a punch card, when you have a pile of punch card, and you say, can you run this program for me now? And the answer is no. Come back tomorrow to get the result of your program. We are not in those days anymore, okay? You can just make some changes, save the file, and then run the script again. So the first answer is we can. The second one is I want to catch problems as early as I possibly can. So this allows me to double check to make sure that the query itself is okay before I use the result of the query to make anything out of it. Is that okay? All right, so now we can continue. And this code, I probably want to turn into a subroutine because all of this code is needed in order to specify the subject of a particular entry. So I'm going to turn this into a subroutine. Okay. Maybe not this part here, because eventually what I want to do is to generate the code for a select element. So when you look up HTML select element, gives you a pretty quick introduction of a select. So basically, your select, would specify options, and then each option has a particular value and also what to display in the drop-down box. And this is what I really want to generate, is the drop-down box. So that's what this code is going to turn into when we get to that point. But at this point, we just want a form so that we can add something to the subjects table. So we just print form. This is a form, and I automatically match the end first, so this way I don't forget about the end form. And in here we need a text field, so we need an input. Type is it just text? Just text, like that. Okay. We also need to make sure that we know the name of that thing. We'll just call this new. We can just call it subject. Okay, this is going back to what I want to do. In all of my code, is to use a string to refer to the subject. So this way, if I have a typo, I'll have a consistent typo all over the place. Okay. That should be all that we need here. Okay, we need a submit button. So we have input, type is submit, and the name of that is going to be new subject, and we'll define all of these later. And we can always specify the value too. So the value is what is displayed on the button itself. Okay, so we can say the value is really just create new subject, and the double quote, and that's the end of this line. Okay. All right. So when I refresh, it should give me errors. Okay, because I have undefined variables. String subject is not defined. String new subject is not defined either. One refers to the submit button. The other one refers to the name of the text field. But this is good. Anytime when your script is giving you errors like this, it's better than the hidden errors. Okay. So I probably want to change this name to new subject submit. Okay. So subject. Okay. Since I have a split already, that makes it kind of. Whoops. That makes it kind of handy. I can go back to the beginning and add to all the string definitions that I already have. Just kind of keep piling here. So str subject is just going to be subject. Str new subject submit is new subject. Okay. All right. So with these changes, I should be able to generate the form properly. Oh, maybe not.
You do have an assignment operator there. So,
yep. But these are the least of my worries. Syntax errors, not a problem, because they can be checked. All right. So we have the text field and the button. Doesn't look good, but it's there. Okay. Okay, so there's the third component. So now we have the form. We need the code to process the form. Where do we put that code? At the beginning of the script, or after I generate the form? At the very beginning. Okay, very good. So what we are now doing is to go back and look at the code that does all the processing to figure out, okay, am I processing the request of some kind of form? So I'm looking through this code here until I get to the beginning of that conditional statement. So let's see, we have a lot of subroutines. There we go. So this is the first check of, okay, did we select something from the table itself? Okay, so we want to look at the end of this conditional statement. So we look for the end of this one. This is for selecting multi-select. Look for the end of this one. This is also processing, more additional fields. Okay, so we keep looking. Keep looking. Okay, so this is the actual beginning of the generation of the HTML document. I can put the code here. So now I say if is set get and then $str new subject submit. Okay, I think that's the name of the button itself. If I have a typo here, it's going to generate an error, as the output of the script, which is good. Okay, because this means it's not going to be a silent failure. If that is the case, then we are going to we will attempt to add this subject to the subjects table. Okay. So I save the file and I immediately refresh it, because if I did make a mistake, it would have shown up as undefined variable here. It didn't show up, so that means that I did not make a syntax error. So now we can go ahead and process it. Okay, the first thing we want to do is to check for duplicates. So we want to say, if is there one? I think that's the name of the subroutine. Okay, and then we specify the link, and we also have to generate, or we have to create an associative array to do this. So we'll say dollar subject criterion, and then square bracket. The subject has to equal to, oh, we also want to make sure the other part is set as well. So we want to say is set $get $str subject. Because if one is set but the other one is not set, something is wrong. Okay, because they both should be set at this point. So now we know that this is already set, so we can just go ahead and take it here. Okay, I cannot remember how to use is there one already, even though we just made it today, so that's why we use this. And this particular table is subjects, and the associative array is subject criterion. Count field is going to be subject ID. That's what we use for counting. So if there's one already, we complain, and then we can say there's a duplicate. So this is not the right place to generate this particular error message, but I'm just going to use it for testing purposes. So we'll say subject already exists. That. Okay. So we just want to test, okay? We just want to test up to this point and say, if I try to add blog again as a subject, is it going to complain? Because we wanted to complain, and say, okay, we cannot do this. So now we can refresh the page, okay? No error should happen. We go here, we specify, okay, let's go ahead and add blog as a new subject. And when we go back to the beginning, it did not process it. Ah.
Don't we have blog already? Don't we have blog already?
We do, but it should print the error message.
Oh.
But it did not print the error message. Okay, let's do it one more time. And then we specify blog. Click it. You can see that there's no get parameter specified here. So that means that the action of clicking this one is not registering here.
Put the method in the post.
If you don't specify, I think it automatically makes use of get and not post. But I could be wrong. No, we just use form in the other ones too. I might have a mistake with the submit. And you can also see how the color is not the same. Oh. Okay. Okay, something is really not right here. Okay, let's go back. Okay, the form itself, I'm just double checking the form itself first. So the form is here. Is the type, yep, submit is good. I mean, it does have that. But it's not submitting the form itself. So that's the other submit. We have a name, we have a value, another submit.
Here's a white.
Say that one more time. In the value? You mean the space here? Okay. You can always look at the source and look for new subject. Okay, this is all in red, which is an indication that we might have a problem. And the first error is already is here. This close form is not closing anything. And then this whole thing is highlighted in red. No space between attributes. And it says it's missing. Oh, okay. I see it. Embarrassing. I forgot that. The close angle bracket. Okay, that is embarrassing, but it's there. Okay. Let's do that one more time. Refresh. Okay. And click. Ah, okay. This time it works. So if we complain that it is already exist and not work, so now it's time to insert, right? But don't we already have the insert code somewhere? Okay, so we can turn it into a subroutine. So I'm not going to do that part. I will let you guys do that part, okay? Because you all have the same code base that I have here. Is that okay? What else do we need to do to modify this script? Well, what we are seeing here, what is missing? What is missing in this table? The subject is missing. Okay, so if the subject is missing, don't we want to add that one? Okay, so we'll go ahead and add the subject. Okay. Huh?
To the alter, right?
Sorry?
Just to the alter table?
Yes, yeah, we did all of that stuff already. So we made all the changes to the database already. So it's just a matter of making the HTML code or the PHP code that generates the HTML to match what we have already changed in the database. Okay, so we'll go ahead and look at how the table is generated. So this is where the table is generated, and we do have a select all. So the first thing we need to do is to change the select statement. Okay, and how should we change the select statement? Using join. Okay, you guys remember?
Also, you just select the table field names. Period, table name, right? Select this, period this, select this, period this. And then you have a where clause.
Well, we got it done a little bit earlier, I think. There we go. Except, this time we want to select everything instead of just, subject, title, and author. We can now specify asterisk.
Yes.
Okay. But if you select asterisk, it's going to be, that will be a problem. Okay, so we'll try select asterisk and see what happens. Seems like it's okay. Here's the actual blog. How come we got 2 4s here? 1 4 1 4 1 4 1 4. How come we got 2 4s? The first 4 is coming from main content. The second 4 is coming from subjects. In other words, they're both subject ID. This is the subject ID of main content. This is the subject ID coming from subjects. Okay? It's not helpful. This is not what we need when we are just printing the content. Does that make any sense? So that's why we may not want to print every single field. So when I go back to the script, okay, this is the other one. This is the actual table. So instead of doing this, I might want to just specify a few things. Okay, so I want to hand select what I want from this particular select query. So I definitely want title. I want author. I want created. I want content. I want content ID. I also want subject ID. But in order to specify, to be more clear, I can now specify this is main content dot subject. Oh, actually I take it back. Yep, this is subject dot subject. I don't need to know the ID. I just need to know what name it is. But then the from also has to be changed. This one has to be a join operation now. So main content has to join with subjects as a table. And then we have to specify a where, because now we need to specify what kind of join we are dealing with. So now we need to specify the join is based on content dot subject ID equaling to subjects dot subject ID. The order would still be the same. That part I don't have to modify. Is that okay? Are there any questions about how I modified the select query itself?
If you had left asterisk in there, so like we demonstrated, and in that case you had 2 columns.
Yep. If I
that posed a problem if you knew what you were doing when you were displaying, and you just only display one of those 2.
It would display both, but they would have different names. So when you look at this, it would have 2 subject IDs, and then we'll have a problem of differentiating which subject ID, because I don't think it will prefix it with the name of the table and a dot. So then we'll have a problem of with subject ID. It doesn't really matter because they're both the same in this case. So it would not actually be posing a problem. But I would much rather not to have that problem to begin with. If I have control over the issue, I'll just go ahead and control the issue. Okay? Okay, second question. With all these modifications to the select query, would it pose a problem if I just refresh the script at this point? In other words, my select query has changed, but I am not changing the code that is generating the table itself. Would that be a problem? So now you have to, why would that be a problem?
If I'm understanding what you're telling me correctly, that would be a problem because your code doesn't reference the new names of things that you changed to the database.
That is correct. So we are not going to display subject because the table does not display subject. But will it cause problems with the existing display? Will it change this, or will it also actually give me some error messages?
I think actually I don't think it would actually ruin the table. I think it would just give error messages.
Okay, you're correct. It doesn't do anything because I'm just adding one extra field to the result of the query. That one extra field is called subject. I'm not using it. Okay, you can have 20 gazillion fields that you request from the select that you choose not to use. It's perfectly okay. So that's why everything is still displaying okay at this point. So now we go back to the code, and then we will continue to make changes until we get it to work. All right. So now we go into this code, and obviously, gen editable table, editable row, it will have to change too, but I'm not too concerned about that one yet. The first thing we need to do is to deal with the table header. So right now, the table header has got title, author, and created. Table th is a subroutine so that we can sort by title, we can sort by author, and we can also order by created. So now the question is, which is not specified in the homework assignment, do we want to order by subject?
Why not?
Yep.
When you get down the main display, you're going to be selecting by that. Displaying them on the other page.
Displaying on the other.
On the main display page.
Yep.
You'll be displaying them by subject.
Okay. So we might want to order by subject. Okay. That's fine. So we'll go ahead and have a table header for subject. Like so. Okay. But that means we also need to make we need to create an extra ID so that we can specify, okay, we want to order by subject. Okay, so we'll need to make some changes to table th. Okay, so we look for table th. We look for the definition, which is here, and it is order field name. Okay, that's fine, except that we need to use orderable fields reversed. That one needs to have one extra item now. It's because we need to add subject to this whole thing. Now this is also why this way of doing things is kind of advantageous. Just by adding subject into this particular array, it automatically will know that when the ID of which field to use for ordering is, I think in this case it's 4 because it starts counting from 0. It knows that it is corresponding to subject. Okay. Do you guys think that is the case? In other words, just by adding, okay. Just by adding this call here, and also making the matching change over here. Okay. We'll now have a new column for subject, and it's going to be sortable. We can use it for ordering.
Well, in the gen editable table, you still don't have subject, so why would you have a new column? See your function code.
Oh, that one that we'll deal with later.
Okay.
Yeah, but for now we're just dealing with this one first. Okay, just for displaying purposes, do you think this will work? We'll have a new column for subject, and not only that, we can also use it for ordering. Okay? We'll test it. Okay, ta-da. But it doesn't really matter, whether you click it here or click it like that. I guess it changed it. This is ordered by, okay, if you look at the bottom of the screen, which most of you cannot really read, hold on a second, let me resize the screen first. Resize, make it up. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm not sure whether you can read, when you're in the back, but it says right here, order by equals to 4. That 4 is identifying subject. And if you look at the title has a order by equals to 3, author has order by equals to 2, created is 1, and that's it. In other words, I have just created new ID to identify ordering by subject to be a plus, to be 4. That's because I have a data-driven approach. Now this is, I would say this is not basic programming, but at the same time, this is also why a data-driven approach works really well, because by changing one thing, you're automatically making adjustments to many other things at the same time. Okay. All right. So we got a few more things to do, because when we are not just displaying the subject, we also want to make sure that at least it has an entry when we generate the editable table. So we have to go to gen editable table and specify, okay, you have one more item now. So basically we want the subject value by default to be empty, and then we have to make use of that here too. So now here we have the subject value, which is our parameter, and string subject is just your subject itself, and we want to make it a global. But it is now a text field. Okay, we'll just leave it the way as it is, which is just a text field, and then we'll turn it into a select later on. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. All right. And then we just have to make sure that string subject is there. Yep, it is there. All right. So we go back here. And then we want to see, okay, so that's okay. We got a text field for editing the subject, which we have to change later to become a drop-down box. But all the fields, oh, we are not okay. We are off by 1.
Yeah.
Why are we off by 1?
But that's in your editable.
Right. So I thought I just added one more TD here. Okay, we have an empty field. Okay, we got an empty field followed by the subject, and then followed by the title, and then the author. But the author is not there. The author is gone.
Because commented out?
No, this part generates the authors. Remember, the author has a fancy drop-down box that's also editable, but that is no longer here. The author field is gone. Okay, let me just go ahead and edit this one. Syntax error. Okay, fine. Line 112. Subject. Oh. I use a semicolon when the comma is expected. Okay. Okay. Refresh. Now it looks better. Okay. Because this is just a text field. Okay. I also want to make sure that when I try to edit one particular row, it would put in the correct thing over there. And it did not. Oh, that's because the call is not changed correctly. Okay, so we have to look for all the calls. This is the call. The call needs one more thing. That's basically what it is. Subject, like that. Okay. Refresh. Yay. Okay. So what is left to do is to turn that block, edit field, into a select. Okay. But you have to be careful because the select has to display blog and all the topic and all the other entries. but when it is selected, it is the ID that you have to report in, because that's what you are going to use to insert into the table. So are there any questions about this? I mean, do you guys want to keep going, or do you want to kind of like, okay, we know how to do this now and have it turned in by Sunday? Yep, go ahead.
So, yeah, I wasn't able to do the drop down.
Okay, so we want to look at the drop down. Okay, so to the drop down, we got most of the things, you know, to do the drop down from this part already. So we'll turn it into a subroutine. So we'll say this is a function, subject drop down, and I'm going to use gen here to say that this code generates the code, the HTML code for the subject drop down. It will need link as a parameter. Okay. And it goes from here to here. How many people go back and fix your indentations when you do something like this? Very good. Do you guys have tools to do it, or do you just do it manually? Manually? Okay. I'll show you this. You guys will go like, what? Really? Well, that's VI. VI has tools to do the shifting, and it has ways to match the matching, to find the matching end of a curly brace. So when you combine, you know, shifting with find the matching end of this curly brace, it will shift everything in between. Him and then, I mean, her and then she and then you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I read a study done by Stack Overflow that suggested that people who space with spaces or organize their code with spaces are more likely to get hired than people who organize it by tabs. And I think it's very interesting that you showed me this VI function, because admittedly tabs create very large spaces, but they're easier. But then I see how easy it can be just to make simple spaces in VI and how much neater it is. But I don't know. I just thought it was worth bringing up in the context of this.
I think Notepad++ may have ways to do it too. I just don't know. I don't know Notepad well enough to see whether it can do it. Yep. Go ahead. You got a question?
I was gonna say in Notepad++, I
Uh-huh.
noticed that if you click on a bracket, it'll make red on the side everything that contains that bracket, so you can actually see. I don't know if you've got a tab feature, that'd be amazing, but you can at least see what's connected to what, and if you click the PHP, it'll show you everything that PHP blocks, so very much more helpful than.
Okay, for those of you who have totally messed up your 400-line program in terms of indentation, and you say there's no hope I can get this done by hand, okay, look into these things. It's called a beautifier, okay, PHP beautifier. There we go. Okay, also known as formatter and beautifier. So what you do is you go to this, and and then you copy your entire program and paste it here, and then you go to the output tab. It will give you the nicely formatted version of your program. Give it a try, okay? You know, it's really cool because, you know, it can fix all your indentation problems, you know, without actually having to manually go in and fix everything yourself. Okay. I'm not going to do it here because I think mine is actually fairly well formatted already. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to here, and all we need to do at this point is to generate the necessary HTML tags. So we have a select. Okay, I'm not very good at HTML itself, so we have to actually say select, and I think it needs a name. Does the name belong to the select? Yep. Okay. So name is. Should I pass that name in? Yep, I guess so. So we'll say select name. Okay, like so. And then we have double quote, semicolon. And here we have the matching end of that. Like so. And then in between we have the items, which are known as the options. So we print option. It only needs to have a value, which is going to be the ID and then the name of the actual entry. So in this case we have ID equals to, value equals to. Okay, so that corresponds to row bracket 0 because it's corresponding to the ID. That's the value.
Probably what row there?
Huh?
Row.
Oh, row. There we go. Thank you. Okay, it needs the actual display of that thing, which is going to be row bracket 1, and it needs an end tag for that option, like so, semicolon. Okay, so I think this function should generate the drop-down box that is needed. Well, we'll give it a test. So this will go into gen subject dropdown is going to go into split. It's going to go into gen editable role. So instead of using a text input for subject, this is the TD that needs to be modified to use that one. So we'll take out all of this stuff and call our new function, which is called gen subject drop down link, and then we need to give that select a particular name. I think we can just keep using the old name, which is subject, like this, and then a dot. All right. Give it a spin, see whether it works. Get rid of all this stuff. It's outside of the form, but it works. It is outside of the form. Okay. Why is it? Oh, okay. It's outside of the form because, is that what your problem is? You cannot, remember, you said you couldn't get selected work?
Yeah.
You cannot get it in the form. Is that the problem?
I actually never even got to it because I was stuck on everything else.
Okay.
I'll have to,
Okay, so.
I have to make my edit where my edit page first. There's stuff I have to fix before I can do this. It's hard. I have, so I did the join and I did some of the subject on this assignment because I got so stuck on the last assignment. I just moved forward, so I've got about half done on each, and
I see.
got a lot of work to figure out.
Okay. And yeah, go ahead.
I mean, can I update my record from a separate form, not in the line of the table?
You can use a separate form to add a new subject.
Can I update?
But when you edit a particular row of main content, that needs to use a drop-down box.
Yeah, I can use update with a separate form.
Okay.
To update with the drop down.
Okay. So when your other form is for updating a row of main content, right? So and in that form you have the drop-down box to select the subject.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a separate one.
Okay, so but right now we have this problem of somehow this is not getting into the form itself. Okay, even though when you look at where it is clearly called inside the form, and before the form ends, at the end here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to double check, okay? Because I always want to double check, make sure the source is correct. So we are looking for subject, and we already see there are several issues, because it's highlighted in red. Select name equals to subject. Start tag select seen in table. Start tag select seen in table. Okay, all right, fine. We'll look for selected.
Is that an end tag before the
Yep,
select?
yep, that's right. So it is outside of the TD. Okay, why is it? Okay, so it's outside of the TD. I'm just looking at the function call here. So TD is here, and then the gen. Oh, okay, I know why. Okay, this is totally my bad. The way I use gen subject dropdown is as if it returns a string that has the select thing, but that's not what it does, right? It is actually going to print out the HTML code corresponding to the select when I call this. So when you look at this particular line, when you look at, okay, let me show you which line number we are talking about here. So when we look at line number 131, it is going to call the subroutine first, okay, which generates the select. And then it will proceed to do the rest, which is printing the TD and also printing what gen subject the dropdown is going to return, but it returns nothing. It doesn't return a single thing. All the stuff is printed inside. So I got two ways to fix this problem. I can either call it separately, or I make it return the string, return what it is printing. So I can fix it in either direction. So I'm going to do it the second way, which is turning this into its own print statement. Call the subroutine, and then print the end tag as its own statement. This will fix the problem. Okay, are you guys catching the problem too? Okay. It will not happen in C, because in C, such a function is a void function. When you try to use the return value of a void function, the compiler would just say, nope, cannot do that. Since I'm teaching this class, I cannot say I hate PHP, but let's just say that there's room for improvement.
I think you hate PHP in a way that only somebody who's experienced with it can truly understand.
Okay, so we got it now. We got the drop-down box. We got the subject, and then we got our fancy spancy drop-down plus editable, text field for the author, and then we got our usual stuff for the text. But the plus is not going to work because we have not changed our insert. So that's the last thing that we are going to change, right? Okay. But we still want to do a plus here because I want to know what kind of get variable I'm getting back. I want to make sure that the subject is turning in the correct ID. That's what I want to make sure before I even work on the insert. So I'm going to go back to blog, which has an ID of 4. So in the get query, I should see subject equals to 4 when I click this. Does that make any sense? So click that, make sure that's happening. Cool. Okay, so now I can go back and work on my insert. So the question is, how much work do I have to do with the insert? Not a whole lot. Okay, so the way I search for that is I just look for the word insert. And insert is already done here. Okay. Insert into main content, set created, and then we have the insert fields. So what we really need to do, the only thing left, actually it might be taking care of that already. You want to check? Okay, so since I'm still having this window over the over the browser, unless you really caught what happened here when I click the plus sign, how can I tell whether this is working already? If it is not working already, which means the insert is not getting the subject ID into the table, into the main content table, what should display as the new entry? Because I know for sure it created a new entry, but what would display as the subject? It would be a null, right? It would be nothing, because the join operation would have failed in that case. Okay. If it was successful, it would display as block, right? So let's see whether it is missing or whether it displayed correctly. Okay, scroll down. It is missing entirely, so the query did not go through correctly. Okay. Let me just double check, make sure. Okay, let's pick something else. And it did not get inserted, which is okay, because I probably am missing something in the insert statement. All right, so we look for the insert statement. So the insert statement relies on insert fields, and that's basically what is setting everything. And we want the subject. Oh, I know why there's a problem, because in the form fields, I'm not including the subject ID. So it's time to kind of add it back here. Subject ID is subject ID. And then we'll put it here. This is also going back to the idea of using a data-driven approach. Okay. And also, if I do it this way, I also have to change the name of the field to subject ID instead of just subject. So I have to look for string subject. Okay. That's okay. But in gen subject dropdown, this one I need to change it to string subject ID. This is the other form. Okay, never mind. I need to match the field name with the actual name of the get variable. That's what I'm trying to get to. And this is where I need to use subject ID. Like so. Okay, I think that should fix it. So blog. Let's make it news, because this way it will stand out. And it's still not doing it, and yet there's no error message. Okay, subject equals 5, title is that. Content ID is 2. It's not doing the insert entirely. It's skipping the insert. Okay, well, So I'm gonna resort to the breadcrumb method to see how far it got. Okay. Because I want to see whether it even got here. Did we attempted to insert? So we'll say ready to insert BR, save, and then we refresh, and it doesn't print anything like that. And we'll try to add something. Okay, it did go to ready to insert, and it inserted this time. Maybe I just forgot to save the file again. Maybe. Pretty highly likely. Okay. This just in some reporter, some news. And, okay, ready to insert. Yep. Yay.
All right.
I can turn it in now. Almost. So add modification, delete modification. On admin, give me the ability to delete subjects. I haven't done that yet. Edit modification. If I misspell a subject, give me the ability to fix it. So those are all referring to the actions corresponding to this form. You can create a new one, you can delete an existing one, and you also want to be able to edit an existing one. So are you guys okay with that, or do you want to kind of keep going?
So we can make whatever the interface is, as long as it can fit the
As long as it does what the homework assignment is asking for? Yep.
even separate form is okay.
Right. Yep, you can make a separate form. But do you guys know what to do at this point? Because the editing of the subject is actually easier than what we have done so far at this point. Because there's only one problem with deleting a subject. What do you think that's going to be?
You have to delete all the other entries.
You have to decide what to do with the other entries. So let's say we delete the blog one, right? With all the ones that are already with a subject of blog, what are you going to do with those if you decide to remove the subject's role corresponding to blog? That becomes the question.
The assignment said to delete.
Huh?
Yeah, the assignment told us that we have
To delete all of those?
Yeah, delete
Okay.
everything over there.
Okay, so with that particular delete, how do you formulate the delete query?
Isn't it the same as formulating the other query? Instead of using the ID, well, instead of using the ID for main content, we'd be using the ID for the subject.
Okay, so we'll
We've already deleted, we've already done a delete code.
So we will select from the contents of the
Mhm.
blogs.
Yep.
by the blog.
Okay,
If
so
we find them, then we delete them first.
right? So if I can use a select to find all the rows from main content where the subject ID corresponds to blog, you can modify the select into a delete query.
Yeah.
So instead of select from, you say delete from, where subject ID equals to whatever the ID of blog is, and then you go in and delete the actual blog entry from subjects, the table of subjects. Is that okay? So that's for removing. Adding is relatively easy because you just make sure there's no duplicate, and then you use the insert query to add an entry. To change it means you have to know which one you're changing. So it's a two-step process. So you need to know which one you're changing and what you're changing it to.
Isn't this very similar to adding an author?
Yep. Well, no, not exactly the same, because authors do not have IDs. There's no table corresponding to authors, but there's a table corresponding to subjects. So when you want to change a particular subject, you will need to, it's a two-step process. You will have a drop-down box like this to select which one you want to change, and then the text box will next to it. There'll be a text box next to it to specify what you want to change, what you want to change it to. Yep.
So I understand, it's for PHP exercise that we're doing like this.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't it be like for a functional integrity cascade delete already built into the database, so we just delete it and automatically deletes all the children?
You can specify constraints when you create a table.
Right.
So when you specify constraints, part of the constraint can specify that if your foreign key is referring to a row that has been deleted, delete all those rows as well. I believe most databases allow you to specify constraints like that. Yep. So that would be the kind of quote-unquote automatic way to do it. Yep.
I was just thinking, so I realize that things would be called a little different. The actual drop-down menu that you showed us, where you can type in above and create a new subject or a new, author, and then they would show up on the list. Is that possible while changing the subject? To do the same kind of thing, except obviously you have the code for the subject ID instead of what we did with a name.
Okay,
It
so
it seems like the drop-down box that you had
You're talking
showed
about
us
this, right?
actually had already showed us kind of how to create a new name.
I see what you mean. I
So
see
you
what
can
you
kind of
mean.
combine- I mean, I realize the code behind it will look different because the subject has.
Okay, but then you cannot differentiate between the case that you are adding a new subject as opposed to changing an existing field, an existing subject. So that's the part that you cannot differentiate using this mechanism. So you still might need to use different submit buttons, of the same form, because one single form can have multiple submit buttons, right?
Yeah.
So you can have one submit button to say that whatever I have selected using the drop-down box, delete that. So that would trigger the cascading delete of all the main content roles corresponding to that particular subject. Another button will say, I want to change the name, so that whatever text field is next to it will become the new name of that particular subject. And then the last button will say add, so you are basically just, so the drop-down box is ignored, and instead, the text area is used to create a new one.
Okay. That makes sense.
Is that making, okay, cool.
That seems simpler than trying to make the other thing work though.
Yep. So just to finish this, I hate to kind of leave things halfway kind of hanging. So instead of just leaving it halfway hanging, I'm gonna do it like this. Okay. This may not be the best looking one, but it will get the job done. Gen subject drop down. We got link, and I can still use the same select name, which is str subject ID. Okay. And now we have 3 buttons. Okay, one button is for creating, one button is to change. Okay, so and then the last one is to delete. Cannot have 3 submit buttons?
Only have 1 submit button per form. You can call them buttons, and then you can add in
Okay.
where they go, so that you can take what the get values and all that kind of stuff, but you can't have it submit.
Well, I want to see what happens if I do it like this. It still gives you 3 buttons. The question is it gonna, okay. So the question is it going to give you, okay, new subject is create new subject, because that's what I clicked. And then this one, change subject name. And this one is to delete. So that seems to work.
It's not supposed to.
Not supposed to? Okay. I will double check on that because multiple submit. Okay. Of course, that's Stack Overflow. Yep. Yep. Go ahead, easy.
Isn't what happens when you have multiple buttons that they behave differently based on variables such as on submit, on click, telling them to take certain actions when they're interacted with, such as to a PHP script. I mean, a button's just a button until you tell it to do something, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it is permissible because this is straight from W3 school and it has two.
As I read, this was from the HTML book that I have.
Okay. So you have to use buttons instead of submit.
Submit.
Okay. So it's a button instead of an input, but the type is still submit.
Okay. Yes.
So the question is, okay, so now I have a question. So what is the difference between an input with a type of submit versus a button with a type of submit?
The button, you can have it do a different action,
Uh-huh.
what the form action is. The submit button only does the action on top.
Ah, okay, gotcha. So this action is associated with a submit button as opposed to a button which can specify something other than what the form specifies.
Right.
So as long as the action, this is still the action that I want, I can still have multiple submit.
As long as you call it button and not submit for the input type.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't get it to work though.
Okay, so let me just look this up real quick. Type. We're looking for type. No. There's no further. It doesn't say anything about, multiple submit. Which textbook are you reading?
I didn't bring it.
Oh, it's okay.
Want me to bring it next time, or I can email you which one it is? And
Yeah,
I'll-
that's fine. Yep, that's cool. Because I still cannot find, any specific restriction that, submit, you cannot have multiple submit.
in a form. Well,
Yep.
what this was showing in this book was
Mhm.
if you want to have a separate submit, then you have to have another form you create for that submit button. That's the way they got around it.
Okay.
I'll email you.
Okay. Well, there's also, another way to fix this problem is instead of using a multiple submit button, you have one single submit button, and then you have another drop down to specify the action. So you have a drop down to specify, are we adding, deleting, or editing? So that's another way to do it.
I just put radio buttons on.
Okay, that works too. Because anything you can do with a drop down, you can do it with radio buttons. Okay, so there are many ways to get this done. That's the bottom line. Yep. So are we feeling okay, or
Yeah.
yes? Good? Good? Good over here? Okay? Back there?
Yeah, I'm trying.
I can do this because it's not getting recorded. Easy?
I'm as fine as I'm capable of being at the moment.
Okay. Well, if you guys run into problems, let me know, from here to Sunday, so I can kind of take a look at your code.
Okay.
Okay? But I think we got the basics, covered. We got all the basic stuff covered. I am writing a new module, regarding sessions. So starting next week, after Sunday, we're going to move on to sessions. and how to authenticate, how to log in, how to maintain the illusion of a session. So that's going to be a fairly involved discussion. I will have videos to explain many of those concepts, because in some way it is kind of abstract, because there's no such thing as a session. It is an illusion. It's an illusion partly done by HTTP, partly done by cookies on the browser, and partly done by PHP as an engine to interpret the cookies. So it is an illusion, but it is a very important one, because without the concept of a session, you have to re-sign in every single time you click something. You have to resubmit your password every single time you click on something, which is not reasonable. So, so session is a big topic, and we have a little bit more time to get that homework assignment done. We get 2 weeks to get to the next homework assignment done. Yep.
So this might be a way more esoteric of a topic than I'm bargaining for, but I was just curious that if online, as in on a website, a session is an illusion, is it also an illusion when you're like, for instance, you have a terminal open and you've used sudo and it remembered that you used sudo before and is thus waiving you from having to add into your password a second time?
It is, yes, it is probably the same type of mechanism. Okay, so we still have a little bit of time left, okay? So I want to kind of use this opportunity to at least introduce what it is as a session, just at a very high level. So I'm going to go to a particular website, like Amazon, okay? And let's see, I'm not signed in yet, okay. So even at this point, it is already a session, but it is an unauthenticated session. In other words, as I browse through the items, as I add items to the cart, it is maintaining all of that. Okay. So the bottom line is, by refreshing, just hitting this button here, can someone give me a guesstimate of how many individual HTTP connections it is making? HTTP stands for Hypertext Transport Protocol, which is what your web browser, how your web browser talks to a web server. Okay, that's the language used by your web browser as opposed to the web server. That's how they communicate. So each connection is getting a particular thing. The document itself in HTML is one thing. Every single bitmap that you see here is another thing. In other words, you are looking at least 50. Okay, in this case, you're looking at 50 individual HTTP connections just to display this one single page. Those connections, if you look at HTTP itself, they are not related in whatsoever. Each connection is really just saying, I want to get that resource. The server says, okay, fine, here it is. Okay? So how does it know that I am adding items to the shopping cart? So I can click on one item here, and I say, okay, I want to add this to my cart. Cart has that one item, right? I have not even signed in yet. And then if I click on the cart, it knows exactly what item I have just added to the cart. How does it maintain all this information?
Well, we have session variables and it's maintaining it there.
Exactly, it is done by the illusion of a session. So the next question is, how does it know that this URL or this particular request, this URL request is related to the previous one? What is making that connection? I don't see anything up here that is identifying anything that we can see. Yep.
Well, for one thing, I think that would insinuate that they were using post, and also
okay.
Isn't it that the information? I always imagined that there was a table in a specific database that is basically your user information associated to your login name, and so it would access the database.
But I haven't even logged in yet. But I have not even logged in. Yep, go ahead.
I'm gonna guess, maybe I'm wrong, cookies?
Cookies, yep, cookies is the answer. So what you want to do is you want to look at all the cookies. Now I cannot remember how to get to my cookies. there should be a little search bar that will let me search for items inside the preferences, but I cannot remember how to get to it. Maybe in advanced. Okay, so since I cannot find it, I'm just going to talk about it. What is a cookie, other than the ones that you can eat? Yep.
A cookie is a file that is installed on your computer by a website that contains information that is later used about the website.
Okay. So what happens is like this. Okay. So I'll let you pretend to be the browser. Okay. So make a request. I'm the server.
Okay. Send me these pictures.
Okay. So when you send me the HTTP request, you're just asking for a resource, right? So as a server, I can now say, you know what? I'll reply with the content that you just requested, but I would like you to store this thing, which is known as a cookie, on your side, on the browser side. Okay. So the reply from the server is what specifies and say that, hey, browser, store this as a cookie. Okay. So I'm giving you the resource and the cookie.
My user has already said no cookies.
if you turn off cookie, you cannot shop anywhere. You cannot do online banking. There's nothing you can do basically without using cookies. You cannot even use Carol's website without cookies. Okay, so here's a cookie. Okay, and you store it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so to make another request to me.
Okay, send me the price of this item.
Okay, as a part of that request, guess what? You are attaching the cookie that I just asked you to store. So you're passing that cookie back to the server. Okay? Remember, I'm the server. I was the one who generated the cookie to begin with. So when you pass that cookie back to me, now I can say, let me match that cookie against all the cookies that I have sent out to different browsers. I found your entry. That is how the illusion of a session is done. Okay? At a very basic level, that is how the server can maintain the quote-unquote logic of a persistent connection, and understand that your second request is related to your first request. It's coming from the same client in the same quote-unquote session. Yep.
I just want to go out and say for accuracy's sake that I never store cookies, and Amazon and Coco themselves actually do work on my computer. So it's not that you literally can't use the websites, it's that certain features work differently.
Okay, so let's see. So are you going to privacy to turn off cookies?
I have a multitude of add-ons, and I also don't even use Firefox. I use Qt browser.
Okay. All right. So right here, I can now go to Amazon, as a domain name. And you can see Amazon has stored many cookies already into this particular browser. If you click on one, okay, if you click on a particular one, somewhere it should display, yep, there you go. So we have the name of that particular cookie. We have the content of this cookie. We have the domain of the cookie. So the domain of the cookie is basically specifying when something that ends with .amazon.com is when you're sending a request to anything that ends with Amazon.com, attach this cookie as a part of the header of the HTTP request. That's what the domain part is saying.
You just said that there are multiple cookies on this machine, so then how does it know which one is your cookie?
Which one is
to send to Amazon?
If it matches the domain and it matches the path, then it will send it as a part of the HTTP header of your request. In other words, what you see, here, okay, what you see over here is really only a part of the URL request. Okay, it can contain many other things like the post part and also the cookies. If you really want to look at, how many cookies are being sent, or how post messages are being sent, I highly recommend the one that I just talked about in the previous week. It's called, cannot remember the name, Firefox plugin examine post cookie. Okay, that should find it. Cookie manager, nope, 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 nope. Temper data, that's it. Okay, this is a really good plugin to install, and I'm going to add it, okay, just to show you what it can do. It's really cool. So restart the browser, and it's persistent. So now if I go to add-ons, I should see temper data here. View and modify HTTP. So this one allows you to view and modify HTTP headers, track and time request, use it to view and modify headers, and that will include post messages, but it also shows you the cookies. Let's see, how do we make use of it? I haven't used it for a long time. Okay, turn on menu bar, go to tools, temper. Okay, there we go. We can start temper, and we'll just go to Amazon. Okay, temper with request. Tech portal. Okay, import request. Submit. Submit. There we go. Okay, so if you choose to temper, it shows you, this is the temper data is popping up this. It is showing you that you're passing these cookies. So it tells you what cookie is being passed. It also shows you if there's a post message, it will show you the post message as well. Okay, we'll stop tempering because we can just kind of go back to history. Okay. But this is a really good tool. Okay, right here. So when I close this, something is being is time based. So when you go back to any one of these are the individual requests. So this is also, do you see how this is like popping up? That's JavaScript. It's Ajax doing it. So the Ajax there's something that is depending on time. So when the timer goes off, it says, okay, let's go update something. And that's why it keeps asking me about all of these things. And I'm suspecting it's Amazon that's causing that. Okay, let's. Yep, it's all from Amazon. Where's my canvas? Okay, so there we go. So you can go to the canvas, you can say temper. When you say temper, it shows you what host, what you're reporting your user agent as. In other words, if you want to tell Canvas and say, I'm not using Firefox, I'm using Internet Explorer, you can change that string now so that the other side, Canvas, will say, oh, I see that you're using Internet Explorer. You can look into the cookies. Okay, so this is the cookie. It contains multiple cookies. And let me see if I can look at all the cookies. Okay. Submit. And it gives you a log as well. And you can see how many requests are generated just because of Canvas. So submit. This is Google itself. Okay, I suppose I can stop tempering. So anyway, this is a really